Good day and welcome back to the channel. Today we do part 2 of the Divine Rebellion series. So Divine Rebellions part 2, Mount Hermon. So reading from Genesis 6. When man began to multiply on the face of the land, and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of man were attractive, and they took as their wives any they chose. Then the Lord said, My spirit shall not abide in man forever, for he is flesh. His days shall be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterwards, when the sons of God came into the daughters of man, and they bore children to them. These were the mighty men who of old, the men of renown. So this is a strange passage. According to this passage, the sons of God, and we know that term to be Elohim, what we sometimes like to call the angels, right? So the sons of God saw that the daughters of man, or the daughters of Adam, were attractive. Some commentators in the past have said that the sons of God were Seth, and the daughters of man were daughters of Cain. I don't know where they get that nonsense from. The sons of God, with the exception of Adam, sons of God are direct creation of God. Seth wasn't a direct creation of God. He was a direct offspring of Adam. And if you look at the name of Cain's children, Cain seemed to have had a change of heart, right? But by no means, and aside from that, the passage, the word translated man there is mankind, is Adam. So the daughters of Adam is daughters of men. And there is, so that theory is crazy. So this is showing you the birth of these things called Nephilim. But what are Nephilim? So Nephilim, usually translated as giants, is a Hebrew word, and it comes from the Hebrew word Naphal. Naphal means to fall, so Nephilim can also be translated as fallen ones. When the Bible was translated into Greek, which is the work called the Septuagint, which happened about between the 3rd to 4th century BC, the word Nephilim was translated as gigantes. Gigantes came to mean giants, but it seemed to have initially meant earthborn. So Nephilim, which is usually translated giants, can mean fallen ones. Another term throughout the Bible used for Nephilim is a weird term. It's Rephaim. So sometimes you'll see the word in the Old Testament giant, but if you look, you get a concordance, say look up the original word, it's Rephaim. But Rephaim means a shade, a ghost, dead ones, right? In fact, in the Jewish armed services, the Jewish army today, there's a special forces group that's called the Rephaim, right? They call themselves ghosts because you don't see them. They come, they quietly move into an area, do what they have to do, quietly get out without anyone knowing they were there. But this group of Rephaim in the Bible, some of them were alive. For example, when Moses was going through or leading Israel through the wilderness, at one point they had to face off against a force led by someone called Og from Bashan. And we will talk about Bashan quite a bit today. So Og from Bashan, and he was a leader of a group of Rephaim, but they were all alive. So why are they referring to living beings as ghosts? Let's hopefully see or explore why this would happen in this video. So let's go forward. So looking at the passage again from Genesis chapter 6 and reading from 4, the Nephilim were on the earth in those days and afterwards, when the sons of God came into the daughters of man, and they bore children to them. This is the passage. But you will notice in the passage there is very little information. But while there is very little information, it seemed as if that people understood the backstory. So if people understood the backstory, there is very little reason for the writer to use very scarce and expensive resources like ink and paper or papyrus to write down something where everyone knows the backstory. And why do I believe everyone knows the backstory? When Moses sent the 12 spies to reconnoiter the promised land, 10 of them came back. So with the exception of Joshua and Caleb, all of them came back and said, the children of Anak, the Anakim, who were Nephilim, are there. And we are like grasshoppers to them. We can't win this. We can't, we can't beat them. So they understood something about the Nephilim. When David went against Goliath, it says they were Rephaim, the Goliath and all his giant family, they were Rephaim. They understood something about the backstory. No one wanted to fight them until David came, because Goliath is Rephaim. So they knew something about the backstory. And the surprising thing is, even hundreds, over 1,000 years later, in the time of the New Testament, those people in the time of the New Testament knew about the story as well. Let's look and see. I'm reading a couple passages. There are more, but I just picked two. The first one I'm reading would be from Peter, 2 Peter, and from chapter 2, verse 4. For if God did not spare angels when they sinned, but cast them into hell. Now the word used here for hell is Tartarus. I will do a future video on hell, because there are a lot of misconceptions about hell. When we think of hell, we think one thing: Dante's Inferno, fire and brimstone, everlasting fire, smoke that does not, worm die not. However, there are, depending on the translation, there are 5 words that are all translated hell in the Bible. And unfortunately, 4 of those 5 words mean very different things. So in this case, Tartarus is a prison, a deep prison. So if God did not spare angels when they sinned, but cast them into hell, into Tartarus, into a prison, and committed them to chains of gloomy darkness to be kept until the judgment. Obviously, this is the judgment at the end. But I will ask a question. Where in the Old Testament do you see we see angels who sinned? We just read the passage from Genesis 6 about angels who sinned. But where do you see God casting them into Tartarus, into a deep prison, and committing them to chains of gloomy darkness? That is nowhere in the 39 books of the Old Testament. Nowhere. Let's look at the passage from Jude. And the angels who did not stay within their own position of authority, they did not stay in their job, they did not stay in their position, but they decided to do their own thing. They decided to rebel against the position they were put in, but left their proper dwelling. And the word proper dwelling here is okaterion. I just did a video on the rapture, and to the end of the video I was talking about the parallels between Sukkoth, which is the Day of Tabernacles, and the rapture. Where in the rapture, where Sukkoth points to sometime in the future, we are going to leave our temporary, flimsy tents and move into proper dwellings. And that is foreshadowing when we are raptured and we change bodies from this temporary mortal body to permanent immortal bodies. This is the same thing. The word proper dwelling is okaterion, it's house. So the angels switched house. What form, what ability they had, they took on flesh. They took on a body. Right? But left their proper dwelling. He has kept in eternal chains under gloomy darkness until the judgment of the great day. So Jude and Peter are quoting the same thing. So therefore neither Jude nor Peter received a private revelation from Yahweh. They obviously have a source that they both read and they are both referencing. Now the thing is, not only Jude and Peter have this source that they are referencing. Alright? Oh, by the way, the source that Jude and Peter are referencing here, it's taken directly from 1st Enoch. And it's not only Jude and Peter reference 1st Enoch. John does. Paul does. Throughout the Gospels, Jesus does. They all, most of the New Testament writers, reference 1st Enoch in one way or the other. We just don't know that's what they are doing because we haven't been exposed to it. Now, one thing I should get into here. 1st Enoch is an apocryphal book, yes. But it's an apocryphal book that appeared around 300 to 400 BC. Alright? 300 to 400 years before Christ. Now, there is also a 2nd Enoch, a 3rd Enoch. 2nd Enoch appeared about 600 years after Christ. And 3rd Enoch appeared even later than that. They are obviously books you want to completely ignore and stay away from. But 1st Enoch has some merit to look at. Do I believe it was written by Enoch? And the Enoch who was raptured, seventh from Adam? No, I do not. Right? In fact, let me rephrase that. Do I believe if it was written by Enoch? My answer to that is no, and it is also maybe. Why no? Enoch was definitely written somewhere between the 4th century and the 3rd century BC. That's thousands of years after Enoch lived. So he couldn't write it. Aside from that, it's highly unlikely that there would have been writing in the time of Enoch. There definitely wasn't Hebrew. And it's highly unlikely there was writing at all. There would have been language, but it probably was not writing. So, no, I do not believe that he wrote it down the way we think of it today. Now, where does the maybe come in? The maybe comes in because during that time, there was something that we have lost that we don't use, and that's called oral tradition. People will pass on a story from generation to generation verbatim, right? There were these law keepers, these, you know, they were called different things in different cultures. And some of it is still practiced in Africa, though it's dying. And they would pass on stories verbatim from father to son, on and on for thousands of years. And things lasted, stories have lasted thousands of years through that. So it's possible, quite possible, that this is what happened with first Enoch. We don't know. But one thing we do know is that everyone in the Bible had a backstory and understood the backstory. So if we want to really understand, we need to understand the backstory as well. So let's start to take a look at the backstory. So I'm going back to the passage about when men started to multiply in the face of the land, etc. So I want you to look at this passage. All right, take a good look at this passage in Genesis 6. And now I'm going to bring up another passage. All right, so take a good look at this passage. And let me bring up another passage now. This is the passage taken from 1 Enoch, from chapter 7, I believe. And it came to pass, when the children of men had multiplied, that in those days were born unto them beautiful and comely daughters. And the angels, the children of heaven, saw and lusted after them, and said to one another, Come, let us choose us wives from among the children of men, and beget us children. And Shemiyaza, who was their leader, said unto them, I fear you will not indeed agree to do this deed, and I alone shall have to pay the penalty of a great sin. And they all answered him and said, Let us all swear an oath, and all bind ourselves by mutual imprecations. An imprecation is a spoken curse. And all bind ourselves by mutual imprecations, not to abandon this plan, but to do this thing. Then swear they all together, and bound themselves by mutual imprecations upon it. And they were in all 200, who descended in the days of Jared on the summit of Mount Hermon, and they called it Mount Hermon because they had sworn and bound themselves by mutual imprecations upon it. Now, mutual imprecation is a mutual curse. Hermon, Mount Hermon, and I'll talk about Mount Hermon. Mount Hermon is a massive mountain range in northern Israel. It's about over 700 square kilometers. 70 square kilometers of that is in Israel itself. It's the highest mountain range in Israel. The Arabs have two names for that mountain range. One is Jabal al-Sheikh.
According to an Alexa Answers contributor, Rocky Mountains.
Pardon me, Alexa just chose to go mad. Okay, so the Arabs have two names for it. One of them is Jabal al-Sheikh, which means the snowy mountain, because Hermon is so high that the top of it, there are three peaks, and they're always covered in snow. And the other name for it is Jabal Haramun, all right, meaning the consecrated mountain. Arabic and Hebrew are both Semitic languages, and they're related. Hermon means consecrated, but not necessarily consecrated for anything good. It's set apart. Hermon comes from the Hebrew root karam, and karam has similar meaning to the Arabic haram. It's consecrated but forbidden. Karam is used throughout the Bible. When the children of Israel had invaded the Holy Land, there were times God told them, when you go into this place, don't take anything. Don't take food, don't take wives, don't take the animals, don't take anything. But depending on the translation, you'll say either put it under the ban or devote it to me or wipe it out. they all mean the same thing. The word there is karam. Karam means devoted unto destruction. So it's consecrated, but it's consecrated to be destroyed. So Mount Hermon is called Mount Hermon because it's consecrated, or those who did what they did there are consecrated, they are set aside, they are devoted for destruction. Now, if we go further into the passage, you'll read that both the rebellious angels, as well as, they're also called watchers, by the way, both the rebellious angels and their offspring taught men how to do everything that's evil, taught men about drugs and other things to debase themselves, and they started doing, weird things about mixing animals with humans and all manner of crazy things. And because of this, God had to wipe them out. Enoch further goes on to say when God had to wipe them out, the Nephilim, when they die, they do not die like men, and they won't be resurrected like men. So whether they are alive or whether they are dead, they call themselves the Rephaim. We are the walking dead. We cannot be resurrected. All right, let's go forward and look at a couple more passages concerning this. Okay, so reading from Isaiah 28 and verse 13. O Lord our God, other lords besides you have ruled over us, but your name alone we bring to remembrance. They are dead, they will not live. They are shades, they will not arise. To that end you have visited them with destruction, and wiped out all from wiped out all remembrance of them. Now if we jump down, same passage, but we jump down to verse 19, the writer says, Your dead shall live, their bodies shall rise. You who dwell in the dust, awake and sing for joy. For your dew is a dew of light, and the earth will bring to the dead. And the earth will give birth to the dead. Now, Isaiah speaking or writing this passage and addressing Yahweh in the passage, speaking about lords who ruled over us. Yes, it's Israel. And he says that those lords are dead, they will not rise. They are Rephaim, they are shades. The word he used there for shades is Rephaim. They are Rephaim, they will not arise. But later on he says the other dead, the other types of dead, and they will rise, they will live, their bodies shall rise, they will rise from the dust. Now, if you read further into First Enoch, and you understand the thinking of First and Second Temple Hebrews, there was this belief that the Rephaim, the Nephilim, when they died, they did not die like men, in that they did not go through the same or were put in the same place as men. Theologically, prior to Christ, men die and they all go to a place. They all go to Sheol, which unfortunately is translated death. They all is translated hell. They all go to Sheol and wait for the day of judgment when everybody will be resurrected. Some to life, some to death, the second death. However, the Rephaim, it was believed, the Nephilim, it was believed that when they died, they did not go to Sheol. They stayed on the earth. However, they stayed on the earth as disembodied beings. When Jesus, I'm probably getting a bit ahead of myself. I'll save that for later. But they stayed on the earth as disembodied beings. the general belief or the general thinking in the time of First and Second Temple Judaism was that the dead Rephaim, or whether they were alive, they were not subject to resurrection. They could not be resurrected because they were not actually men. They were these divine human hybrids created by rebellious Elohim. All right, let's look at another passage. Reading here from Deuteronomy chapter 29 and verse 24. Now, a little back, this passage is all about, so Moses is talking to the children of Israel, and he's told them what will happen if they are loyal and obedient to Yahweh and the law, and what will happen if they are disloyal and disobedient to Yahweh and the law. And this part of the passage is talking about what will happen to them if they are disobedient. So it says from verse 24, all the nations will say, why has the Lord done this to this land? What caused the heat of this great anger? Then people will say, it is because they, meaning the Israelites, it is because they abandoned the covenant of the Lord, the God of their fathers, which he made with them when he brought them out of the land of Egypt, and went and served other gods and worshipped them, gods whom they had not known. So the passage says that the people around Israel will say the reason for this destruction of Israel is because they went and served other gods, gods they did not know. The word there used for other gods is Elohim. They went and served other Elohim and worshipped them, Elohim whom they had not known. Now, let's look at verse 32. They sacrificed to demons that were no gods. That no gods could also be that were not God, or that were not Elohim, the big Elohim, Yahweh. So they sacrificed to demons that were not gods, or that were not Yahweh, or that were not gods. To gods they had never known. Let's back up there. So it seems as if in verse 17 of that passage, that first no gods meant that were not Yahweh, but they were gods, they were Elohim that they had not known. Please, if you haven't looked at it, please go back and look at my video about what is a god. An Elohim is the catchword for any being, any disembodied being that is not really of this realm. So they sacrificed. So the first passage from Deuteronomy 29, they were judged, and the land came into this calamity because they served other gods, gods whom they had not known. Now in Deuteronomy 32, it says they sacrificed not to gods, but to demons that were not Yahweh, or that were not God, or that were not the Elohim. And when I say the Elohim, I mean the unique Elohim, Yahweh. But these demons that they sacrificed to, they were Elohim, because it goes on to say, to gods they had not known, to new gods that had come recently. When the flood destroyed all beings, all intelligent life on earth, except for 8 people that went into the ark, a lot of, well, not all, but a lot of the Nephilim were destroyed. And according to First and Temple period Judaism, those Nephilim Now, I didn't say all Nephilim because we see Nephilim after the flood, which means one of two things. There was a next divine rebellion, which is not written anywhere, or Noah's sons married women who had Nephilim in their bloodline, which seems likely, right? But it is understood in First and Second Temple Judaism that the destruction of the Nephilim on the earth led to there being demons on the earth. You don't see them anywhere in the Bible. You don't see Nephilim in the Bible. Sorry, you don't see demons in the Bible anywhere before the flood of Noah. But you see a whole outbreak of them after. You see a lot of them. But some may ask me, outside of this passage, we don't see the word demons anywhere in the Old Testament. Yeah, we do. Now, the word demon here, right? The word translated as demon here is shedim. And yes, it's one of the few places, if not the only place in the Old Testament, that we see the word shedim. But let's look at the word shedim. Now, shedim most likely comes from a Sumerian word that is shadu. And in Sumerian mythology, the Shadu, they were gods, but they were lesser gods. They were lesser gods who could take people over, who had all, or at least some of them had all the markings of what we think a demon is. All right? And, well, in fact, they were, the Shadu of Sumerian and Mesopotamian mythologies were all considered demons in the times of both first and second temple Judaism. So in the time of the first temple, in David's time, in, even in the judges' time, all the way up to Jesus' time, which would have been the time of the second temple, these Shadu were considered demons. If you look at the Mesopotamian mythologies, they also had depictions of these Shadu, and they all looked like certain types of snakes. They were not necessarily snakes, but they were like hybrid of human and snakes. Right? In the Mesopotamian theologies, they were considered to be in the Mesopotamian mythologies, they were considered to be the children of divine snakes. Isn't that incidental? Isn't that coincidental? The problem is I don't believe in coincidence. So the people around Israel considered these beings to be the offspring, the Shadu, to be the offspring of humans and divine snakes. They were also closely linked with other beings called the Sairim. The Sairim. What are the Sairim? Let's take a look. So, a little further down in Isaiah, we just read Isaiah 32. I'm now going to read Isaiah 34. And reading from verse 14. And I'm reading here from the ESV. You can read it from the KJV, the King James. You can read it from whatever translation you like. Most of my references would be from the ESV. Most of them. Why? It's just a preference thing. Okay, so you could read it from any translation you like. But at the end of the day, we will always dig a little deeper because the Bible wasn't written in English. So I may have references from the ESV. I may have references from the KJV. Sometimes I may have references from another translation. But when I start to dig into things, I'm going to go into the words that were written in Hebrew for the Old Testament, except for a little piece of Daniel that was written in Aramaic, and Greek in the new one. So reading from Isaiah 34, the New Testament that is, sorry. So reading from Isaiah 34:14, and wild animals shall meet with hyenas. The wild goat shall cry to his fellow. Indeed, there the night bird settles and finds herself a resting place. This passage sounds a little better in the KJV. So I will read the KJV along the King James along with some translations of, some translations back into the original Hebrew. So the wild beasts of the desert, and the word that is translated wild beasts of the desert is sea. The sea shall also meet with the wild beasts of the island. The wild beasts of the island is translated from the word E. So the sea shall meet the E, and the satyr, and the word translated from satyr is sair, shall cry to his fellow. The screech owl, the word translated from screech owl, the word that is translated screech owl is Lilith or Lilithu. Also shall rest there and find place for herself, and find for herself a place of rest. Now, we should all know about Lilith. Lilith has been a hero to the feminist movement of the last 150 years. There are some people made up or came up with some story that Adam had a first wife, and that first wife was Lilith. And because she refused to have sex in the missionary position, she was cursed and became a demon and a succubus and all sorts of crazy things, right? So, but Lilith was initially, right, a Mesopotamian demon. All of these things are Mesopotamian demons. The sea, the E, the satyr, and Lilith. Lilith was like a vampire. It was a succubus. It would come and steal children's life forces and steal men's life forces. All right? When mothers had newborn babies and the newborn babies died for whatever disease, they thought that that newborn child was visited by this demonic entity referred to as Lilith. Now, the Sair, I just read from Isaiah 32 that not Isaiah 32, from Deuteronomy, about the Shadim. And I stated that the Shadim is considered to be very closely related to this Sair. Now, the Sair is translated satyr. In Greek mythology, a satyr was a hybrid being that is half man, half goat. Interestingly, in Mesopotamian folklore, that is exactly how they depicted the Sair. They were these half men, or they looked like half men, half goat, but they were all demonic entities. You see, a lot of the time we read things in the Old Testament, and because of the translation, we don't understand that the writers are talking about demonic entities. There's a passage, he has redeemed our lives from the snare of the fowler and delivered us from the noisome pestilence. The fowler and the pestilence are translated directly from the names of Canaanite and Mesopotamian demonic entities. So the Old Testament is full of demonic entities. They only appeared after the flood narrative. All right, so let's go on a bit. Now let's get into the New Testament, and let's get into a particular thing, and I'm reading from Matthew here. a particular incident, in fact, a particular couple of incidents. So reading from Matthew. Now when Jesus came into the district of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say the Son of Man is?" And they said, some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and others Jeremiah or one of the prophets. He said unto them, "Who do you say that I am?" Simon Peter, Shimon Kepa, replied, I mispronounced Peter's name. Shimon Kefa replied, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." And Jesus answered him, "Blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonas. Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, or Shimon, son of Jonah. For flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it." Couple things here. The first thing, I'm going to get into this a bit more further down in the video, but I need to touch on it here. They were in the district of Caesarea Philippi. Caesarea Philippi over the years had a number of different names. It was called Panias at a certain point. It was called Banias at a certain point. And at a certain point, it was called Bashan. I stated we are going to get more into Bashan, and we are getting more into Bashan. It was an area at the foot of Mount Hermon. And there was a big cliff face. Well, not was, it's still there. There's a big cliff face there. All right. Now, on that cliff face, there was a gate. Okay. Now, the area of Caesarea Philippi, or Bashan, or Banias, or Panias, whatever you wish to call it, was the home of a number of temple of deities. A number of deities had their temples there. Nemesis had their temple there, had its temple there. Or the temple of Nemesis was there, the temple of Jupiter, the temple of various Mesopotamian gods, the temple of Pan. All of them were there. And there was a hole or cave going down under the mountain. And they thought, or when I said they, the people of the time thought that this was the gateway to the underworld, where certain gods ruled in the underworld. Now the underworld, this is the New Testament. The underworld, or what they call the underworld, was Hades. Unfortunately, Hades is translated as, you guessed it, hell. The thought here for underworld is not fire and brimstone. It's not Dante's Inferno. The thought for it is where certain deities or certain lesser deities went and, ruled and stayed for a while, etc., etc. So they are in Caesarea Philippi. Peter just had a fantastic revelation. Now, remember, all these people, Jesus and his disciples, they are all Jews. They have grown up speaking Hebrew. Therefore, they have grown up in a culture of playing with words. we see Simon Peter. And Simon Peter is his name and his nickname. His name was Shimon. His nickname came to be Peter, Kepha. Kepha is a small stone, is a stone, is a rock. So Jesus says, you are Peter, so you are Kepha, and on this rock I will build my church. Some of us have come to think that the church is built on Peter, that Peter was the first after Christ. He was the first leader of the church. The first leader of the church after the resurrection of Jesus was James, Jesus' brother. He was called James the Just because he prayed so much his knees were scarred and knotted up, because he always prayed on his knees. Right? He was killed at the temple. They threw him off, well, according to tradition, they threw him off one of the high walls of the temple, and then they stoned him because the fall didn't kill him, so they finished him off with stones. He was the first leader of the church. When there was a bit of a conflict with Paul and Peter and some of the others, they had to go and meet with James to decide that conflict about whether early non-Jews or early Goyim, early Gentiles who converted to Christianity, if they had to become Jews, if they had to sacrifice and follow all the 600 plus laws and dietary laws, etc. That became a major conflict in the early church between the followers of Paul and the Judaizers. So the church wasn't built on Peter, it was built on other things. But if you are in this area, you have in front of you this massive mountain range, the biggest mountain range in the land. Mount Hermon is called the Eyes of Israel. One of the peaks of Mount Hermon has, in modern times, one of the peaks of Mount Hermon has a permanent Jewish listening post. The Jewish army is there, you can't go up that peak. They have all sorts of high-tech equipment, listening to their neighbors and intercepting the transmissions of the neighbors. So you have this massive mountain dominating the landscape. And then you are in front of this next cliff face, and I'm going to show you a picture shortly. This cliff face with all these temples and with a gate, the gate to Hades. And he says, you are Kepha, you are a little stone. But you see, on this rock, what is this rock? What's the rock in front of them? On this rock, on this mountain that was the home of a rebellion that led to all of this chaos breaking out on the earth, all of these demons inhabiting the earth, all of these things that have caused men or taught men to do things to destroy themselves. On this thing, on this rock, so you are a little rock. You are a Kepha, you are a little stone, but on this big stone, I will build my church. I will build my church on the ashes of this stone, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. Unfortunately, a lot of translations have this a little off, because it makes it sound like the gates of hell are attacking the church. A better translation of this is the gates of hell or the gates of Hades shall not withstand it, because the way it was originally written in the Greek, it's as if the church is attacking the gates of hell. And the gates of hell will not be able to withstand the onslaught from the church. Okay? This took place at Hermon. Let's look at another passage. Well, before we look at that passage, this is Mount Hermon. So you see entire mountain range there. This is Mount Hermon, the highest point in Israel. And this is the temple area. So we see over here on the right, this is the temple, I believe, to Nemesis. I think this is Jupiter, and I think this would be one of the temples of Pan. So I have a next picture here, but it's all marked out. So you have the cave entrance over here. Then you have the Temple of Augustus. Sorry, it wasn't Pan. Next to the Temple of Augustus would be the court of Pan, or the courtyard of Pan. You have the Temple of Zeus. You have the upper tomb temple. This thing that's called the lower tomb temple, I honestly think it's the Temple of Nemesis. This would be a wider shot. So you see, oh, the Grotto of Pan, that hole that I was talking about, right? You see a bigger temple of Pan. You see here the temple of Zeus, and you see in all this area, all of these would be other things about other structures that concern either temple or support for the temple. Shops to buy whatever the case. But this is what Caesarea Philippi or Bashan looked like in the time of Jesus. And here we have this hole, this cave I talked about. This would be the area in modern day. We see the ruins of the temples and the courtyards, but we still see the gate of Hades, the gate of hell. This is a close-up of the cave, massive cave, going down under the mountain. And we spoke about Pan. This would be what Pan was depicted of. Half goat, half human. Now, Pan looks very much like depictions of Lucifer. And that's no coincidence, because medieval writers use Pan as a template of what they thought, or what they, in their minds, what they thought or perceived Lucifer to look like. Pan was a very interesting fellow. He was the Greek god of the hunt. There are statues, I just haven't posted them here. Pan would sleep with man, woman, and animal. So that sort of sexual immorality, that was all within worship of Pan. So when you go to worship these deities for their feasts, etc., there would be orgies. And at that orgy, you sleep with whatever you chose to sleep with, and that is in service, or that is worship of the deity. These beings, these Pan, these Sair, all these demons, they came to get men to destroy themselves. They came to get men to corrupt themselves. So, back to the next passage. And this is in Matthew, a little further down. And after 6 days, Jesus took with him Peter and James and John, his brother. Meaning John, James' brother. This is a different James from the leader of the early church. And so Jesus took with him Peter and James and John, his brother, and led them up a high mountain by themselves. And he was transfigured before them, or he changed form before them, or he let his true self be shown before them, and his face shone like the sun, and his clothes became white as light. And behold, there appeared to them Moses and Elijah talking to him. And Peter said to Jesus, Lord, it is good that we are here. If you wish, I will make 3 tents here. I will make 3 sukkot here. one for you, and one for Moses, and one for Elijah. He was still speaking when, behold, a bright light. So he didn't get a chance to finish what he was talking about. Yahweh intervened. Yahweh said, hey, let me move forward with this now. So he was still speaking when a bright light overshadowed them, and a voice from the cloud said, this is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased. Listen to him. Now, I say to people a lot, and it confuses them, and I mean for it to confuse them. I mean for it to confuse them so that they will go and dig a little deeper into what I'm saying and try to find out. Because the keys to knowledge are all based on why. So if you find out the whys to everything, the whys will bring you knowledge. So I say things for people to ask why and then to dig it up. And I always say, I dislike religion greatly. Now, it all depends on what your definition is. My definition of religion is men doing things to make themselves right or to justify themselves with God. That is impossible. There are those who think religion is a belief in God. As far as I'm concerned, or a belief in the existence of God, as far as I am concerned, you have to be a bit crazy to not believe in the existence of God. The Bible says a fool believes in his heart that there is no God. And I'm not going to get into the argument of all the deception that will state of, why there is no God and why there is not. But as far as I'm concerned, the belief that there is no God, it's absolutely crazy. So that's not my thing. But when I say religion, I'm talking about the belief that you have to do all these things to justify yourself with God. No. You have to listen to God and do what he wants you to do, because he justifies you to himself. You can't justify yourself to him. And what we see here is Peter looking to be a little religious. Hey, Lord, let me make some temples. Let me make some temporary dwellings. One for you, one for Moses, one for Elijah. Because you see, we like to stay in the past. So he wants to stay in the past. Jesus, however, was recently Succoth. So he wants to stay in the past. So let's build some tents. Let me make some temporary dwellings for you, for Moses and Elijah. And Jesus says no. In fact, Jesus didn't say anything. Yahweh says no. This is not about the past. This is the past was pointing towards the future. This is, I am ready. I am putting things in place to bring forward the future. The future ain't no flimsy temporary tents. The future is permanent, proper, strong stone houses. But to get there, we need to do some things. So you know what? That person there who just, allowed a little piece of his glory to come out, that is my beloved Son. Listen to him. Listen to him. We're not going backward. We're not staying where we are. We're going forward. God is always about progress. God is not about tradition. It's about progress. It's about going forward. Your traditions are milestones or guardrails. So don't go beyond these guardrails, because you'll probably go into corrupting yourself. But let the traditions point you forward, because everything points you at something to come. Let's move forward to this thing to come. Let's go forward to this thing to come. So, back to this passage. 6 days after Peter declared that you are the Son of God, Jesus takes them up on a very high mountain. 6 days is not a hell of a lot of time. What would have been that very high mountain? What you think? Okay, so here we have a map of Israel in the time of Jesus. So Jesus and his followers were up in the north, Caesarea Philippi, the area of Bashan. And this is not right next to them, but this is the foot of Mount Hermon. The distance between Bashan and any one of the peaks at Mount Hermon is about 10-15 kilometers. Right? Now tradition states that the Mount of Transfiguration would have been Mount Tabor. But look where Mount Tabor is. Mount Tabor is in the Galilee, in the south part of the Galilee. Now, the distance between Caesarea Philippi to Mount Tabor, it's somewhere close to about 40-50 kilometers. So in 6 days, now it's possible to do that in 6 days. But if we look at the next passage, Jesus is back at his home base in the Galilee, which would have been around Capernaum. So with Jesus, now remember, this is Jesus getting ready to head to Jerusalem to be crucified. So with Jesus leave Bashan, then to go to Mount Tabor, then to come back up to Capernaum, to go back down to Jerusalem. Many individuals believe, myself included, that the place of the transfiguration would have been on top of or one of the peaks of Mount Hermon. That transfiguration took place on Mount Hermon. It doesn't make sense to leave Bashan at the foot of Hermon to come down. Now remember, these guys didn't have cars. These guys use foot. So you're going to walk from Bashan down to Tabor, back up to Capernaum, then back down to Jerusalem. That's not logical. And then he didn't take everyone. He just took a couple of them, just took 3 of them. So many believe that the transfiguration took place on Hermon. But why? So, reading from Matthew chapter 27 and verse 45. Now from the 6th hour. Now, in ancient Israel, the day started at dawn. The day didn't start like with us at midnight. It started at sunrise. So so time was counted from 6 a.m. So the 6th hour here would be noon. Now from the 6th hour there was darkness over all the land until the 9th hour. And verse 46, and about the 9th hour, being about 3 o'clock, 3 p.m., Jesus cried out with a loud voice saying, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani? That is, my God, why have you forsaken me? Now, chapters and verses were added to the Bible in the 15th century AD, about 1500 years after the time of Jesus. So the Bible is by no means, Old and New Testament, a small book. So how did Jews or ancient Israelites find or reference a particular chapter? We will say in Matthew 45 or Psalm 22 or Psalm 82. What did they do? Well, what they did is kind of the same thing they do up to this day. They start quoting the beginning of a particular chapter or verse, or they start they start quoting the start of something. So when Jesus quoted this here, he wanted people, or he was pointing people at something. Now we have to remember this passage is from when Jesus is on the cross. Now crucifixion was not a means of execution or a method of execution. Crucifixion was a method of extreme torture that will eventually lead to your death. The word we have in modern times, excruciating, literally means from the cross. When you are crucified, you have choices to make. And that, well, not choices actually, just one choice. And the choice is, shall my pain be less excruciating, or shall I breathe? The Romans didn't invent crucifixion, but they perfected it. And the Romans found ways to make crucifixion extremely painful. So the condemned person will either hang down a little bit so that the pain wouldn't be as much. And the Romans learned to, put nails and whatever through certain nerve points and stuff, so it's extremely painful. Now when you hang down, your pain will be less, but you can't really breathe. People who were crucified didn't die from the nails. They died from exposure. They died when their heart just gave up because of the extreme shock, the blood loss and the shock and the extreme amount of pain. Or they died from asphyxiation, because if you hung down, you couldn't breathe. So to breathe, you have to kind of pull yourself up on the nails that are through your arms and through your feet. And that's extremely excruciating. So everything that Jesus said on that cross, he had a very important reason. So what is the reason for Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani? My God, why have you forsaken me? I just stated that in Judaism they will quote the first verse of something. It turns out that my God, why have you forsaken me is the first verse of Psalm 22. Now I'm not going to write down the whole of Psalm 22, but please go and read Psalm 22. Psalm 22 is written hundreds of years before crucifixion was even invented, and definitely a long period, over 1,000 years before crucifixion was perfected by the Romans. But Psalm 22 sounds like someone who has or is in the process of being crucified. It starts, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from saving me? From the words of my groaning. Oh my God, I cry by day, but you do not answer, and by night, but I find no rest. It says when Christ was on the cross, he was made a curse. All that was supposed to be on us, the curses that were on us, were all placed on him. He was not just, he was the curse, and all our curses were imparted onto him. God, Yahweh turned his back to him. That's what it says. Read a bit further, right, on your own, please, because Psalm 22 is heartbreaking. It sounds like someone being crucified. And it sounds like what Christ put himself through, or allowed himself to suffer for us. But I want to jump down to verse 12. Many bulls of Bashan, many bulls encompass me. Strong bulls of Bashan surround me. They open they open wide their mouths at me like ravening and roaring lions. What bulls of Bashan is the writer of the psalm talking about? And why would Jesus quote that? Was there a cattle drive during the crucifixion? I just showed a map. Jesus died at Jerusalem. Jerusalem is the south. Way further north is Bashan. So did they drive herds of cattle from Bashan all the way down to Jerusalem? So herds of cattle surrounded Jesus? Of course not. So the strong bulls of Bashan aren't cattle. There's something else. But what else? So I'm going to read a passage from Amos, from the minor prophet Amos. Now, the Bible is broken into major prophets and minor prophets. The term major prophet or minor prophet has nothing to do with their skill or their writing or their importance. Major and minor has nothing to do with that. Major and minor just has to do with the size of the books that they made. So the major prophets, which would be Daniel, Isaiah, Ezekiel, Jeremiah, they have large books. The minor prophets are generally small. Some of them are large, like Zechariah. Zechariah gets up to 12 chapters. It's still quite dwarfed by people like, Ezekiel and Isaiah, right? And some of those minor prophets are just a paragraph. Okay, so major and minor prophets is just the size of the books that they wrote. So reading from Amos chapter 4 and verse 1, hear this word, you cows of Bashan, who are on the mountain of Samaria. Samaria is in the north. After the death of Solomon, when there was the civil war and the Judah stayed in the south, the two tribes of Judah stayed in the south, and the 10 tribes stayed in the north. So the capital of Judah would have been Jerusalem. The capital of Samaria, the kingdom of Israel, the capital of Israel would have been Samaria, up in the north. And the mountain of Samaria is Mount Hermon. So hear this word, you cows of Bashan, who are on the mountain of Samaria. Cows don't graze on mountains. But let's move forward. So hear this word, you cows of Bashan, who are on the mountain of Samaria, who oppress the poor, who crush the needy, who say to your husbands, bring that we may drink. The Lord God has sworn by his holiness that, behold, the days are coming upon you, when they shall take you away with hooks, even the last of you with fish hooks. And you shall go out through the breaches, each one straight ahead, and you shall be cast into Hermon, declares the Lord. So these cows of Bashan, who oppress the poor, who crush the needy, who say to your husbands, bring that we may drink, they will be cast into Hermon. Now, a lot of people, it's not completely clear what Hermon is. The best description we have for Hermon is a high prison or high fortress, but they will definitely be cast out of where they are. Now, this is obviously not talking about cattle. Cattle are not on the mountain of Samaria. The mountain of Samaria refers wholly and solely to Mount Hermon. So hear this word, you cows of Bashan, you who along with your male ones or your stronger ones. You weaker ones of Bashan, who say to your stronger ones, bring that we may drink. A demon is considered or was considered to be weaker. In the New Testament, when Jesus casted out the legion of demons from the individual, that legion of demons asked Jesus, put me in something, put me in a body. Let me go into those pigs. Because a demon always, sorry about that, a demon always needs a body to inhabit. Devils don't. Devils are the same type of being that we call angels. The differentiation are that what we call angels, I like to call, all of them are Elohim, but the ones referred to as angels are loyal to Yahweh. The ones referred to as devils are disloyal to Yahweh. But the same way that angels can take a body, devils can take a body or take on form. When I say take a body, I mean take on form. Before the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, angels came and spoke to Abraham. And Abraham had a meal made for them. It was actually a non-kosher meal, so we should look at that. Those of us who like religion and who like stuff like that, Abraham made a non-kosher meal for angels. But that's not important in this passage. What's important is you need a body to eat. So when the angels came to Abraham to discuss the destruction of Sodom and to discuss that he was going to have a son, they ate. You need a body to eat. When they went to get Lot out of Sodom and to, the people, the men of Sodom, wanted to rape them. You cannot rape a spirit. You cannot rape something that is disembodied. They took bodies. They took on form. When they were getting Lot out, they grabbed them by the hand and walked them out. Bodily. They pulled them away. They got them out of there. They actually kind of raptured them. They took them and violently and pulled them out of there. You need a body to do that. So devils can take on a body. Demons need to take over a body. They can't become flesh. Their flesh was destroyed. Based on 1st and 2nd century thinking, their flesh was destroyed. Some in the flood, those who survived the flood were destroyed over the years through interaction with David killing off Goliath and David's friends and family killing off Goliath's family, his brothers, etc. But the difference, demons are weaker than devils. So hear this word, you weaker ones of Bashan, you cows, you females of Bashan, you who are on the mountain of Samaria, who oppress the poor, who crush the needy, who say to your husbands or to your stronger ones, bring that we may drink. Bring what? Bring what? That we may drink. Let's crush these humans. This is speaking about the coming day of the Lord. The day of the Lord, the day of the Lord's vengeance is largely intended for rebellious Elohim and those aligned to him. And those aligned to them, sorry. So they are meant for rebellious Elohim. Those created from those rebellious Elohim. And those humans who wish to follow these rebellious Elohim. Christ went to Bashan before his death, right before his death. He went but he went there for a purpose. He had a reason for going there. I want to read from a passage from you from 1 Corinthians and from chapter 2. And I, when I came to you, brothers, did not come proclaiming to you the testimony of God with lofty speech or wisdom. For I decided to know nothing among you except Jesus Christ and him crucified. And I was with you in weakness and fear and much trembling. And my speech and my message were not plausible. My speech and my message were not in plausible words of wisdom, but in demonstration of the Spirit and of power. So if your faith might not rest in the wisdom of men, so that your faith might not rest in the wisdom of men, but in the power of God. And yet among the mature, we do impart wisdom, although it is not a wisdom of this age or of the rulers of this age who are doomed to pass away. But we impart a secret and hidden wisdom of God, which God decreed before the ages of our glory. Of our glory. Who is the our? Our is human. None of the rulers of this age understood this, for if they had understood what? The hidden wisdom, the hidden intent, the secret. None of the rulers of this age, none of the rulers of this age understood that, for if they had, they would not have crucified the Lord of glory. The rulers of this age he's speaking about is not humans. But as it is written, what eye has seen, nor ear heard, nor has entered the heart of man imagined, what God has prepared for those who love him. Or a better translation, no eye has seen, no ear heard, nor has anyone imagined the greatness of what God has prepared for those who love him. Why have I quoted this passage? I've quoted this passage because Jesus purposely went to Hermon, Mount Hermon. He went there, and at the foot of Mount Hermon in Bashan, he proclaimed loudly, I will build my church. What is he talking about? He is talking about the same thing from Eden. He is talking about let us make man and let man have dominion. God created intelligent beings. So he created the Elohim. They're intelligent, but they have no body. They do his will in the heavens or in heaven. And then God created this beautiful creation that is physical, that the Bible refers to as eretz, as earth. We're modern people, so when we hear earth, we think of the planet Earth. When the Bible says earth, it means all physical, all things that are not heaven. So he created this physical creation, and then he created physical, intelligent beings for them to rule this creation on his behalf. I keep quoting how the passage that Jesus taught us, or the prayer that Jesus taught us. He did not teach us for us to chant it or recite it. He taught thus that prayer so that we could understand things. Our Father who is in heaven, let your name be hallowed, or let you forever be separate, distinct, and unique. That's what holy means. Holy means separate and distinct. Our Father who is in heaven, you are separate, you are distinct, you are different from what? Everyone else, all the other Elohim. Let your kingdom come. Let your will be done on earth, just as it is in heaven. Who does his will in heaven? The intelligent beings who are there. Who has to do his will on earth? The intelligent beings he created here. The intelligent beings he created there are the sons of God. Psalm 82 says that God took his place in the midst of the council of the divine. Elohim Nesab Bahadat El. In Eden, when he created man, God would come and walk the day. God would have meetings with man, but not just God. Because God didn't say, God said, let us make man. Who do you think God was talking to? Himself? God wasn't talking to himself. He was talking to the other Elohim. He was talking to his family. He was talking to the council. He was saying, let us expand the family with these beings. So when Jesus says, my church, he is talking about, and he was talking to people or to intelligent beings that would have been around. We may not see them, but they were listening. And he is saying, my church, I will build my church. In other words, this Eden thing ain't gone away. My intention, my plans have not changed. I am going to raise up men and make this race of men, these intelligent beings called mankind, I am going to bring them into the divine council. I am going to bring them into the family. They are going to displace you, rebellious ones. And not only are they going to displace you, they are going to destroy you. They are going to fight you. They are going to take away what you have and that what you cherish. Because I will build my church, my ecclesia. The word translated church is ecclesia. Ecclesia in modern days is like a parliament, a congress. In other words, a council. So I am going to build my church, and the gates of hell, the gates of the territory of the rebellious ones will not withstand it. I have not finished, I have not changed my mind from my original intent. Men are going to be great, men are going to be glorified, and this body, this ecclesia, this congress, this council of the divine, they will not be stopped. He did that in Bashan for a reason. And 6 days later, just in case he was not noticed, he went up on top of Mount Hermon, the place for the second divine rebellion. He went up to the top there and he showed off. You all want to know who I am? You all still have doubts? Okay, I transfigured. You know who I am? I am Yahweh. I spread my wings and I show off who I am. This is full disclosure time. I'm Yahweh. And after that, he left the area, went to his base in the Galilee around Capernaum, organized, and then went down to Jerusalem to be crucified. Jesus went to Bashan to pick a fight. He wanted to ensure that these rebellious Elohim did what he wanted them to do. And what did he wanted them to do? He wanted them to crucify him. He wanted them to encourage men to put him to death. Why? You see, they didn't understand. Paul is saying that we impart a secret and hidden wisdom of God, which God decreed before the ages for our glory. Not his glory, our glory. This whole thing is about redeeming man and bringing man back to the original plan he had. The problem is the rebellious Elohim didn't know the original plan he had. You see, they just saw that Jesus is probably coming to enact the day of the Lord. Now, the day of the Lord, they know they're going to die. They're going to die like men. So you know what? Let's do everything possible to stop this. Because this is the one. This is the heel. This is the one whose heel will destroy us. This is the smasher. This is the one who will destroy us, who will remove us. So let's get him out of the way. What they don't understand is that previously Yahweh had no interaction with death. Now, what did you do? You made Yahweh have interaction with death. And all that Yahweh interacts with, he conquers. So what did you just do? You just conquer. You just open death up to be conquered. So now Yahweh has lordship not only over life, but over death. So in the future we have a song to sing. Death, where is your sting? Grave, you're gone, you're expired. So that's what they did. So Jesus, everything that Jesus comes to do, he comes to dismantle the effects of the 3 divine rebellions. So we've covered the first divine rebellion. What Jesus did, okay, Adam and they brought a curse upon themselves and they brought death. Okay, Jesus became the curse. So he's removed the curse from us if we accept it. He experienced death, so he's conquered death, and we can conquer death if we accept it. Because we won't taste death. We won't taste death. I'll probably do a future video on death, but there's a first death which I believe we won't even realize. We're going to close our eyes in one place and open up our eyes in somewhere else. And the second death, that is the one to be afraid of. We were not going to taste it. We have been saved from that. The second thing he did was the outbreak of all these things on the earth that have caused men to go so astray. He's come to destroy all of them. He's come to destroy their structures. He's come to destroy all these and clear the board, clear the earth from all these roaming interlopers that don't belong here. They were created here, they're earthborn, they're Nephilim, they're Rephaim. But when they die, they don't leave, they don't do like men and leave and go to the place of the dead. And he's going to clear them out. But there's a third thing he's coming to do, and we'll touch on that in Divine Rebellions Part 3. And the name of Divine Rebellions Part 3 is focused on what happened at Babel. So, it's been a long video. I try to keep them short, and I'll try to keep them short, but at times they just go on a bit long. So, thank you very much. Like and subscribe. and look out for future videos. Thank you.